In-house or third-party property management? I'm going to answer that in detail and why I do the one I do. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Matthew. I'm a commercial real estate investor based out of Southern California, and I buy commercial property, value add commercial property all over the country. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons of both in-house and third party and who should choose which one. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you which one I chose, why, how I have those systems set up, and how we take care of it. Okay, let's start with third-party property management. So the pros and cons review. The pros are obviously it's hands-off. In theory, a good property manager should be able to take care of most of the property for you, and you shouldn't have to deal with them too often. Now, the reason I started with third-party property management and I started with the pros because if you do not have the time or capacity to manage your properties, then it's simply the answer is third party. If you're a high earning income professional, or maybe you have a family, or maybe you're retired, or you want to be retired. If you have no intention of being involved in the day to day at any level, you definitely need to hire a third party property management. You could probably end this video right now if you're trying to decide which one, but you really don't have time or energy. It's third party. Now, what are the cons of third party property management? Pros are you don't have to worry, you shouldn't have to worry about too much. You still have to manage them, but you have more time to yourself and you're not dealing with the details. What are the cons? The expenses can rack up. Property management companies are notorious for spending money like it's water. They spend money like it's not even theirs because it's not their money. It's your money that they're spending. So I remember back in my multifamily days, I'd have someone that would a toilet would break and I'd get an invoice at the end of the month when I looked at the profit and loss statement for $412 for someone to come and change the toilet. It's because when they called, it was after hours. It was like 9:30 p.m., which is considered after hours. So they sent someone to fix it. The person bought a new toilet and installed it. It cost $410. The material on that is less than half that, and there's no way it took that guy more than an hour to change that toilet. Now, if it was me, I would have, probably already had a handyman on call that I'd be able to do that cheaper. So the expenses can rack up on its property management company because they're spending money that's not theirs. Second is you have a property management fee. Depending on the asset, how big it is, it's going to range from 4 to 10%. Typically, the bigger the property, the lower you're going to be on the percent range. And obviously, if you're doing things like short-term rentals or things like that, it could be much higher than 10, going up to 20, 25%. You have to factor that into your numbers, and that does hurt your net operating income. And that can hurt the numbers, hurt your cash flow. So you need to be able to run the numbers with this property management. Next, this one's important, but I feel like it's not discussed enough. You have less control of the asset. What does that mean? That means because you're not involved in the day-to-day, you don't have the day-to-day knowledge of what's going on in that building. What's going on with which tenant's pissed with which tenant, who you think is about to leave, who's going to stay. You get an insight when you manage a property yourself that you'll never get if you have third-party property management. You're not involved in any of the day-to-day. They just send you a report. So if something's going on that might be advantageous for you to know as a property owner, that information might not get to you. So you do lose control in a way of the asset where you're not involved in the day to day, and that lack of knowledge and information can make it more difficult to make decisions with the asset. Next is at the end of the day, it's just misaligned incentives. Their job is to rent the space as fast as possible so they can start collecting their revenue fees. I've heard stories from some of my buddy investors that'll tell me where the landlord wants or the property management company wants to rent the space for much cheaper than he wanted to just because they want to fill it up quickly. So he'd rather be a little more patient and get better rent. They don't want to go 2, 3, 4 months without collecting that revenue as a property management company, and they'd rather get fill the space up as quickly as possible so they can start receiving it. So it's just not their property. So they're responsible to do the minimum amount so that you don't fire them and they can continue collecting their monthly checks. That's just how it works, unfortunately. All right, in-house property management. It's a whole different animal. So the advantages of in-house property management is you control expenses. You see every expense that's going out. Now you could choose to be as involved as you want to be. You could build a team, property management team that does the property management for you. But the reality is you're going to be in control of the expenses. Every expense is going to be going through either you or someone that works for you. So you're able to keep those expenses under control. You have complete control of the asset. You know exactly what's going on with which tenant doesn't like another tenant, who's about to leave when their lease expires, who's definitely going to renew. All this information is really critical when it comes to leasing negotiations, especially on the commercial side. talking about retail, we're talking about industrial, we're talking about office. It's very important to know the tenant dynamics because these are long-term leases, not short-term ones. So a good negotiation can be very crucial in the value of your asset when it comes to commercial tenants. Another one's urgency. It's again, it's not their property, so they don't have urgency. For example, there was once they just forgot to cut the grass. Now, obviously, a big part of this is me dealing with low quality third party management companies. But the reality is, like, they just no one was cutting the grass, and then the tenants kept complaining to them, and they just it was on the back burner. And then next thing you know, the city slaps us with a fine because the grass was too long. Obviously, I'm fighting with them who's going to cover that because the tenants have sent in requests. The point is, it's not their property. They don't have the kind of urgency you're going to have as a landlord. And then lastly, we went over this, but one of the advantages is direct relationship with tenants when it comes to renewal conversation. Disadvantages. In-house property management is very time consuming. If you're doing the management yourself, or even if you're hiring a team, you have to create those systems, create those operations. That's very time consuming. So again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you're really tapped out on time or you don't love real estate, you don't want to commit the time, you don't have the time to commit, you need to be using third party. Do not become a slumlord because you want to, get the advantages of in-house property management while trying to avoid the disadvantages. That's how you become a slumlord. All right, so you're literally creating a whole other business along with real estate. This is not just in my world. I do value add commercial real estate. Now, if I'm building a property management company that's going to manage these tenants and manage the value add period, I'm building a whole other operational business along with buying, stabilizing, selling, raising capital for real estate. Another disadvantage is difficult long distance. I invest long distance. I live in California, but I buy property in Texas and Kansas and Ohio. It's very difficult to do that long distance. So if the closer you are to the property, the easier it can be to create a property management company that manages your property. That's literally what you're doing. If you're going to do it right, you're going to create a property management company that manages your properties. Whether or not you manage other people's properties, there's laws and licensing and all that around. But if you're managing your own properties, you can create a property management company, which is literally that's the way I want you to look at it. You're not just managing your own properties, you're creating a property management company that manages your properties. Anyway, it's hard to do long distance. Next is it requires staffing and hiring and firing and checking in with people and weekly, quarterly, whatever reviews and KPIs. Like it is an operational business. So everything you'd see in a normal running of a business, that's what it requires. So it's all you get some great advantages here, but the disadvantages are real and they're a lot. Next is it can be cheaper if done properly. You gotta keep in mind that a lot of third-party property management companies, because they use contractors a lot and handymen and all that, they can usually get reduced costs, but they also charge a margin on those items for them. So it's not like they're going to give it to you at the cost they pay. In many cases, they add a percentage to the toilet repair. Back to my previous example, they add an upcharge to the toilet repair so they can get more revenue for facilitating that repair for my building. So in-house property management, it's a lot, but if you're willing to commit the time and energy, it can put your assets in a better position. All right, so this is why we choose to manage in-house. So we manage all of our properties in-house. Right now, we're primarily retail property. We still have a couple of apartments in Ohio, and we're looking at industrial right now. So mostly commercial with one apartment building still in Ohio. So why did we choose to manage in-house? So the story was we started with apartments in Ohio. It was all third-party property management for the first units, but then after I got to about 10 units, I was just looking at the expenses. The expenses were racking up. The cash flow was just dripping in every month. It wasn't anything close to what I underwrote for the cash flow coming in each month. So I just realized that so much of the revenue that was coming in was just leaking out before it even got to me. So that I decided to start doing in-house property management. And around that same time, I also decided to transition from apartments, residential real estate, to commercial real estate, industrial, retail, etc. So first is we can maximize NOI by keeping the cost down because these commercial properties, they're valued on the net operating. So if I can maximize the net operating income, then I maximize the value of the assets. Obviously, some of these are triple net assets where the tenants pay for the expenses off the top, but especially when it comes to multifamily, where you are responsible for all the expenses in the building, the tenant just pays one fixed bill. It's very important that you're able to keep those expenses under control. So even though it's the most management intensive asset class, or one of the most management intensive asset class, multifamily, it is very important that you keep your expenses under control with multifamily. It's the easiest for it to get out of control, and now you're devaluing the asset because you have a smaller net operating income on the building. So we also, Superior Capital, as a company, we transitioned from apartments to commercial. By doing that, it made it so much easier to manage long distance. If tenants are responsible for all the repairs inside their units, their businesses too. So anytime there's any kind of issues, or even if the parking lot's dirty, tenants will clean it up. They'll do a lot. They won't do everything. We still might have to take care of snow removal, landscaping, common area trash, common area parking. So there's still some work, but it's no one's calling us at 11 o'clock saying the toilet's leaking. That's not happening anymore with commercial. So because of that, it made managing commercial properties long distance is a whole lot easier than it is managing residential properties long. Okay. And this next one is crucial, and I got his picture on the right. Done affordably through remote employees. So we have a virtual assistant in the Philippines, Jay. That's a picture of him on the right. He's in the Philippines and he does a lot of our property management. Him and a couple other remote employees. So for example, let's go back to the toilet example that I've been using this whole video. Let's say it's 11 o'clock at night. It's a family of three, and they're in a one-bedroom apartment, one bathroom. Toilet goes out. The only toilet in the house. They have to be able to use the restroom. They call us at 11 o'clock at night, or they submit a ticket at 11 o'clock at night. Jay would then reach out to the vendors we have in that area. We have a list of vendors that we've used in the past that we've been comfortable with, good pricing. Not only that, he'll call several of them to bid it out. Now, this is probably not the best example. If you need it done quickly, you probably have someone you already know. But for most repairs, he'll call several people, get several quotes, and then if it's over a certain amount, he has to check in with me. If it's under a certain amount, he can just pull the trigger on it. And most stuff falls with under that certain amount. So he just goes, he pulls the trigger on it. And then in my quarterly or my monthly reviews, I'll see the expense and know whether or not, based on experience and gut intuition, if it's a reasonable amount of money. The point is there's systems around using affordable remote employees in these other countries, which is a politically correct way of saying third world labor. These guys, he lives in the Philippines. What we pay him in USD is a livable wage, twice the average wage there in the Philippines. And he takes care of a lot of the work, speaks unbelievable English, probably better than myself. And he handles a lot of our repair and maintenance requests. And we've slowly been expanding his hours, and he's been involved in more stuff, including helping us with due diligence when we're buying buildings. The thing is, with good operations, you can make in-house property management affordable. Next is better asset management through closer relationships with tenants. We have very good relationships with our tenants, especially in the commercial world. When we have a retail building, we know our tenants, they know us. Anytime they have issues, they give the property manager a ring. He gives us a review on how every tenant's doing. Before I have a renewal negotiation with a tenant, I will have a conversation with Jay, the property management in the Philippines, and we'll talk about the tenant, what problems we've had, what hiccups I can see, if he's complained about rent, if his rent has been late in the last few months. We have that conversation. I take notes down, and I go into that renewal conversation armed with information so I can get us the best deal come this negotiation. So that is a powerful weapon that you get through in-house property management that you wouldn't get through third party. So these are the main reasons that drove me to transition from third-party property management to in-house property management, and it's been game changer. It has been more work. We have weekly meetings with Jay where we go over all the tasks that he has to do, and we assign stuff to him, and he updates us on some of the big ticket items, on quotes he's getting for big projects. So it's intense and it requires work. But again, if you have the capacity, you can maximize the value of your asset through quality in-house property management. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Just going over what in-house property management versus third-party property management has to offer and which one may be the best option for you. If you guys want to stay in touch, I have my phone number up there, email, and our website. Also, if you guys want to join the school community, that's where we actually talk about deals and we go over details on what we're working on and what problems we're running into. You can find that link in the community in the notes at the bottom. And again, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys on the next one.